viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we have a pretty much exclusive as far as I can tell. Haven't seen this on YouTube or anywhere else yet. Just got in off the route earlier and got to the storage unit, and I had a brand new tool waiting for me in my promotional product order, and it is this. The all-new Snap-on CTR861 Brushless Cordless Ratchet. This has been a long time coming, and it is finally here. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. We're going to compare and contrast it to an older CTR761A, which I purchased new in I think about 2014. It's one of the very first cordless lithium 14.4 ratchet Snap-on released. And then we're going to look at the 2557 Milwaukee Fuel 3/8" ratchet, which I picked up about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And we're going to compare and contrast all three and do a little bit of a head-to-head between the Milwaukee Fuel and the new brushless Snap-on. Let's get to it. So here it is, the new CTR861. This is an 861W1, which means with one battery and the tool. It is part of 14.4 volt micro lithium range from Snap-on, which includes a ton of tools. They have the 761 gun with the little rocker switch. They've got several different ratchets. They've got the short neck, the long neck, they've got the standard, they've got the brute, and all of those tools are brushed. They just started introducing the brushless stuff with the cordless screw gun. I believe the drill is now brushless, and a handful of other tools. They brought out the brushless 1/2" and 3/8" 18 volt tools, but there's still a lot of brushless stuff, or a lot of brush tools to convert to brushless in both the 18 and 14 volt platforms. Here is the new tool itself. As you can see, the brushless logo below the Snap-on. Really nice, new, complete new clamshell. Nice new overmold, more grip, more depth here to get more grip if your hands are slippery. A little bit more area with a little bit more texturization. The old overmold was more smooth. This has kind of a texture to it. The button used to be rounded. It's now got a curvature to it, and it's nicely contoured on the side, so it more easily you can more easily grab it with your finger, and your finger stays on it. The old button, as I said, was rounded, and you were more inclined to slide off it, slip off if your fingers were slick. Now they do, as for the last, I don't know, 5 years, 4 years now, they do laser etch these on the side of your serial number and everything, so you can't lose that. They used to have a peel-on sticker. If you cleaned it a couple times, like brake parts cleaner, any kind of greasy hands, any kind of fluids would start peeling up that sticker. You'd lose your serial number, and it was a pain. So they started laser etching the clamshell. So if this gets all scuffed up, scratched up, it's actually burned through layers of the plastic where you can actually recover that serial number. One neat thing they did. Really cool party piece is this. The new Halo HLR Halo Light Ring. This is an 18 lumen light array. As you see, it's got a delay timeout where it'll stay on for a few seconds after the button's depressed. Fully illuminates around the head of the ratchet and lights up your work area very well. Also can use it as a flashlight, you know, if you're trying to see somewhere in an engine bay or something. Still, as I said, uses the 14.4 batteries. They're a 2.5 amp hour battery. I believe they're 18650 cells, not 100% sure on that. Overall, the body's a little bit thicker. You've got your old school 14.4 battery gauge here. Most of you that have the 14.4 line of tools know about the old battery gauge. You get green, yellow, and then red. There's no 3 or 4 bar system for the battery charge. It's just a color indicator, and it just comes on when you push the trigger. One thing that a lot of people didn't like about the older Snap-on ratchets was the actual button. Not in the fact that they didn't like the button, because a lot of people love the button, me included. I cannot stand the paddle on the Milwaukee Fuels. That's one thing that I just cannot get over, is that paddle switch. But one great thing about that paddle switch is the lock feature, where you can lock this out, and if you're carrying it in a tool bag, you don't have to worry about the paddle getting depressed and the battery being run down because the ratchet starts running in a tool bag, or if stuff shifts in a bag. The new feature of the brushless, if the button is pushed and the ratchet starts going, it has a 120-second timeout. So if it runs continuously for over 2 minutes, it will automatically time out and shut itself down, so it won't drain your battery completely. If it's in a tool bag or thrown in the back of your car or back of your truck, and content shift and something falls on the button, it'll automatically cut itself off so as not to run the battery down, which the old tool did not have that protection. So really quickly, I've got the old CTR861. Again, this is an A model. This is the first version of this tool, and we can compare and contrast a little bit. The new model is a C model. You can tell that because the originals had a chrome neck. All the new ones have a black finish, like an impact industrial finish to them. The old ones had a single LED here on the front. They had the different overmold. As you see, it's more slick. This has more of a texturization to it. I'll get the macro lens out. We'll take a really up-close, in-depth look. Have the same batteries with the really, really nice retention system on here. Those of you with Milwaukee and M12 tools, I love my M12 tools. I've heard a lot of issues about people breaking the tabs off their M12 batteries. I've never experienced it myself up until 2 weeks ago. Not that I broke the tabs off, but the actual outer shell broke off from the inside. So the black outer case broke loose from the red piece inside that houses the 3 lithium cells. It wasn't an XC battery, it was a regular CP battery. There's one Torx screw that goes in the bottom, and that actually broke around that. I didn't drop the tool, I didn't do anything crazy to it, so I'm not exactly sure how it happened. I don't know if it was a stress fracture or what, but I have broken a battery. So a little bit of differences. Your battery status indicator was on the side here, on the side of the handle. Now it's at the back, so you can see it more clearly when you're using it. The body, the clamshell, is fatter for that brushless motor. It's a little bit thicker, as you see. The handle, the grip area, does appear to be about the same thickness, eyeballing it. Overall length appears about the same with the battery top to bottom. This might be a little bit taller. I believe it's 12.2 inches on the brushless version, but it might just be the boot. It might be sticking out a little bit more proudly. One great thing about being a brushless motor is you don't have to worry about the sparks from a brush motor. So I don't know if we're able to see them on camera, but every once in a while you could see sparks through the vents here. And if you're in an environment with gases and explosive, if you could have an explosion, you could ignite a fire. I've heard a story of a customer, Snap-on customer, that cleaned his tool with brake parts cleaner, used an excessive amount, hit the trigger, and the spark from the motor ignited the vapor of the brake parts cleaner, and he got some burns. Well, Snap-on started putting these warning labels on here. Do not operate power tools near explosive environments, such as near gas, just due to that fact. But there shouldn't be really an issue with the brushless motors because they do not have an arc like the brush motors do, and it should be much safer. So with these RPMs on this tool, here's what I was talking about that sticker. Mine is barely hanging on for dear life. 2014 serial number, so I've had this tool for 6-7 years now. RPMs on this, 350 RPM. I believe the current C model has 275 RPM. This older version only had 35 foot-pounds of torque, but it did spin 350 RPM. The current model, brush model, spins 275 RPM, which is slightly lower RPM, but it makes 40 foot-pounds of torque. The new model makes 60 foot-pounds of torque at 275 RPM. So same speed, but more power due to the brushless motor compared to the brush motor. Some of you that have Snap-on 14.4 ratchets and you know of the Brute, it is a slower, I believe 200 RPM ratchet that makes 70 foot-pounds of torque. So some of you may have already figured out this correlation, the equation between RPMs of the tool and torque output of the tool. The faster you spin the motor, the less torque it makes. The slower you spin the motor, the more torque it makes. So 200 RPM, 70 foot-pounds in the Brute. 350 RPM, 35 foot-pounds in the old version. And now the brushless version is the best of both worlds with 60 foot-pounds of torque and 275 RPM. All right, guys, so a quick look now between the Milwaukee 2557 Fuel Brushless 3/8 Ratchet, which was their top dog for quite a while. They just came out with the new Fuel ratchets, but those are the high-speed version that have the much smaller head and lower RPM, lower torque, but higher speed. So the 2557 is more a direct comparison to the new CTR861. 55 foot-pounds of torque and 200 RPM out of the Fuel from Milwaukee. 60 foot-pounds of torque, 275 RPM out of the Snapon. So the Snapon beats the Milwaukee by 5 foot-pounds of force and also 75 RPM. The Snapon has the advantage in my book. I know some people will disagree with me, having the button rather than this godforsaken paddle. I cannot stand it. I have tried my darndest to love this ratchet. Most of you know that I am a big Milwaukee convert. I dumped almost all of my Snap-on battery-powered tools for Milwaukee. You know, I've got the high torque half-inch, the high torque 3/4. I've got the new compact half-inch, the 3/8 compact. I've got the new half-inch mid-torque. I've got the hammer drill. I've got a couple hammer drills. I've got a couple impact drivers. I've got almost all the 14-4 stuff, the straight and 90-degree die grinder. I've got the 3-inch cutoff wheel. I've got the soldering iron. I've got this ratchet. I've got a ton of Milwaukee power tools, not just in the automotive field that you guys see, but also construction and carpentry tools for the Habitat for Humanity house I built and the 2 houses that I'm renovating for rental property. So I'm a big Milwaukee fan. But the one thing I could never get over was the ratchet. I kept all my Snap-on ratchets because even though they were brushed, even though they had smaller batteries and smaller capacity, the speed and the size of the head and the trigger, the ergonomics, won it over, hands down for me personally, for the Snap-on. Whether you agree or not, you know, there's an ass for every seat. Some people will prefer the Milwaukee, some people will prefer Snap-on, some people like Chevy, some like Ford, some like Subaru, some like Mitsubishi, some like Coke, some like Pepsi. You can't please everybody. So this is just my take, my look at it, and you know, take it with a grain of salt. So another thing the Snap-on has an advantage over, at this angle it's hard to tell, but the Snap-on is shorter overall from the bottom of the battery to the top. We are using a 3.0 XC battery for the comparison compared to a 2.5 amp hour Snap-on 14.4. We've got the boot on the Snap-on. We've got the boot on the Milwaukee. So guys, don't tell me that the Milwaukee is bulkier because it's got the boot on it. The Snap-on has its boot on it. So again, the Milwaukee has a single LED. I believe it's rated at 1 lumen. The Snap-on has the 18 lumen halo. You've got an advantage as the original and the Milwaukee only have the 1 LED. If you get a glob of grease or something there, or if it goes out, you're completely blind, you're in the dark. But this one has, I believe, 6 individual LED modules around the outside of the perimeter here. So if one gets covered, you still got light coming out to illuminate your work area. 2, this lens has been tested against solvents and shop fluids where it's not going to haze up and it's not going to discolor and cloud up and block the light output over time. Smaller body, shorter body, thinner battery pack. As you can see, the difference in the overall thickness between the M12 and the 14.4 battery pack. So it's not as wide. You can get it into more compact, smaller spaces. The overall size of the ratchet head itself, the Milwaukee is much fatter, much thicker. The one thing I always loved about the Snap-on was how small the head was, and you could get it into much smaller areas, much more compact, tight areas, which is key working on modern vehicles as they are so cramped. Another advantage to the Snap-on is the selector switch. It sits proud, which most people will say, well, that would get in your way. But when you're working with gloves or you got big hands, it's a lot easier to grab that big selector switch on the Snap-on than try to get that recessed selector switch on the Milwaukee, especially when you've got the boot on it. Another advantage to Snap-on is they have the built-in grease fitting, so you can grease and maintain this ratchet like any other ratchet, whether it be air or battery. The Milwaukee is not easily serviced. It does not have a grease fitting. So Snap-on has a lot of advantages to the Milwaukee in this new ratchet. One advantage to the Milwaukee I didn't mention earlier is the built-on fuel cell with the 4 LED array to tell you how much battery power you have. I really do prefer this over the single colored LED that Snap-on has And one reason that is because I am red-green colorblind, so I cannot really tell the difference between the green and the yellow. So I don't know if my battery's at 100%, 50%, 25%. It's not till it gets down to the red do I see the difference in the color. So having multiple LEDs, you know, showing an actual fuel gauge is really advantageous. So the Milwaukee does get brownie points for having the full fuel gauge on the battery. So how do they stand up to each other in actual use? I just got my hands on this ratchet not 3 hours ago. I don't have a way really to make a test up. It's actually pouring down rain outside, or was earlier, so we really can't even go out and work with these any. I'm going to try to if the rain breaks, but I really want to get the video out to you guys ASAP on this new tool. It should be dropping. Most dealers should have it this week, if not this week, next week. So it will be appearing on the truck very soon. So let's go ahead and see if we can find something around the shop. Perhaps we'll just test the light output to start, and if it clears up, we'll go outside and do some real-world comparisons, turn in some nuts and bolts out on some on the tractors or some of the Subarus out in the salvage yard. You know what, actually, before we do that, let's take a little sound bite, a little listen and a look at these ratchets. Again, 350 RPM here. Really quick, really peppy. What I love about a cordless ratchet, I don't care about torque. These things will hold 150 foot-pounds of braking force. I'm not here to break things loose with this. It's not an impact. I'm worried about spinning nuts and bolts off as quickly as possible when disassembling something on an engine or underneath a car, or, you know, in a dash, not so much with the 3/8 but the 1/4 inch. I want speed. And the old brushed ones were the ticket for speed. So let's listen and look at the 275 RPM from the new brushless model. And finally, the 200 RPM from the Milwaukee 2557 Fuel. All right, so real quick, I know it's very dark on the screen, but we're gonna test light output and working in the dark just to see which one puts out more light and how it puts it out against the work. So first we've got the Milwaukee M12. Pretty good light output. We can see what we're working on. We can illuminate our area here without having to turn the ratchet. Tighten that back down. Now we'll go switch to the Snapon Brushless. All right, so Snapon Brushless time. Let's hit the light. And we got quite a bit of output. It's kind of a 360 from the neck. It's not exactly pointing towards the work, but it's also, you know, more illuminating the entire area. We can see more around our nut or bolt here than we could with the Milwaukee. I haven't changed any of the settings in the camera, so there's no more light being picked up by the camera. I'm not doing any kind of camera tricks. Everything is set exactly the same. Manual focus, manual exposure. So we broke that loose, come back, flip our switch, run it back in. Now we'll switch to the old CTR861A, the old brushed single LED Snap-on, and check its light output compared to the other two. So let's key up the light. And there's no delay. It goes off immediately. We can barely see on the camera. I can see here in the shop. And again, we can't break that loose because both of the other ratchets are stronger. So manually ratchet it, spin it in, change direction. I mean, spin it in, spin it out. I said that backwards, but yeah. For light output, definitely the Milwaukee is better than the old Snap-on, but not exactly sure if the Snap-on beats out the Milwaukee. I'll have to look in editing, put them side by side on the screen, and see which one puts out more light. I think the Snap-on has it by a little bit. The good thing about the Snap-on is it's got more of a true color LED. The Milwaukee is more blue tinted. All right, guys and girls, we are out here under the hood of one of the scrapper Subarus. We're just gonna do some unscientific test here, see what we can and can't break loose just using the motor without manual torque. Comparing again the Snap-on and the Milwaukee, it is late, it's about 8 o'clock, so it is starting to get dark. It has been raining and overcast, so we'll get a little bit of a sense of the light output that these tools have from their built-in lights as well. So we got a 10 mil on here now. That Snap-on really does light up the work area really well. Gotta really be careful with the power on this thing. The old 30 foot-pound of torque ratchet, I broke off quite a few 10 and 12 mil fasteners, just sheared them off with that thing. It had so much oomph. I mean, 35 foot-pounds doesn't seem like a lot, but it can do a lot of damage with smaller fasteners. Let's put it on with the Milwaukee and see if the Snap-on will take it off. Again, here's a fault of the Milwaukee. Trying to get this thing reversed with gloves on, and I cannot get my fingers in there to change that direction. So I grab myself my pocket screwdriver and flip our switch that way. All right, that is fully tightened with just the button, no manual torque on that from the Milwaukee. I'll switch back over to the Snap-on. Both do have fully charged batteries. Snap-on took it off. Let's tighten it with the Snap-on and then go back with the Milwaukee and see if the Milwaukee will take off what the Snap-on tightened. Jeez, that's a powerful ratchet. That's a wrist snatcher. So again, got to get my pocket screwdriver out to switch the Milwaukee. And again, fully charged 3.0 on the Milwaukee and fully charged 2.5 on the Snap-on. The Milwaukee will not take loose what you just saw the Snap-on tighten. Now you see the socket's still stuck on there. Let's put the Snap-on there and see if it'll bust it loose after it put it on there. And yep, the Snap-on busted it loose. Tighten it one more time. With the Snap-on. And really quick, try that Milwaukee once again. See if it can take it loose. Took a couple tries, but it did get it loose. It was over torque there. Did not want to even attempt to move. Again, there's only 5 foot-pounds of torque between the two, officially rated 55 and 60. So the fact that the Milwaukee could, after a couple pumps, it could, you know, impact enough jumping to get it to break loose. They're very similar in the torque output. Again, real quick on the light output. There's the Milwaukee. And the Snap-on. Does illuminate much more of the area and does direct it pretty well in front of the drive what you're working on. Oh yeah, Snap-on definitely wins the light test. And it does have a less blue hue to it. Nope, still not gonna get that. But it's a ratchet. That's the way you're supposed to use it. Manual torque, break it loose, and run it in and out with the button. How a battery-powered, cordless, or pneumatic ratchet should be used. They're not a right angle impact. I don't understand why people are so obsessed with torque output of these things. All right, guys, and there you have it, your first look at the new brushless Snap-on CTR861 versus the older Milwaukee 2557 fuel. On paper, the Snap-on ekes out over the Milwaukee. In reality, they're very close when you talk about power and torque. But again, my opinion, the Snap-on trounces the Milwaukee in features and benefits alone. The paddle switch versus the button, the light array versus the single, the size of the head versus the compact size of the Snap-on, the overall smaller, thinner package, the smaller footprint of the battery, getting you into smaller areas, tighter areas in engine bays and underneath vehicles. The only thing that the Milwaukee really trounces the Snap-on in is the price, the lockout feature for the trigger, and the options for the battery pack amp hour sizes. You can get all the way up to a 6.0 in the M12 XC battery for the Milwaukee for very long run time and a little bit more power compared to only having a 2.5 or 2 amp hour 14.4 volt lithium cell for the Snap-on. So to the point of the video, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what pricing is on this ratchet, what it's going to be. Right now, official list price from Snap-on for the drive body, the tool only for this ratchet, is $369.95. The full list price of the tool with one battery is $459.95. And the full kit, which is the ratchet, 2 batteries, charger, and a tool bag, is $606.95. Whereas bare tool alone on the fuel ratchet is $179 in most locations, and the full kit with 2 batteries, charger, and a tool bag is $259, and I believe that's with 2 CP 2.0 batteries. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.